From the makers of Spiders Will Eat Your Face comes The Animal Saga, 3 films including Spiders Will Eat Your Face, Hamsters, The History, and Goldfish Bowl, Death by Glass. All this pet history on Amazon and BigWeaselLilWeasel.club.
Hi, I'm Joe.
And I'm Mike.
And you're listening to How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up? The podcast. And this week we'll be reviewing Darkest Hour.
Statistically, it's midnight.
Sure, Mike. Hey everyone, and welcome to How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up, featuring 2 guys getting twisted and reviewing movies in a weekly podcast form.
And thank you to Elizabeth Porco on Facebook for that synonym suggestion. If you have any further synonym suggestions, you can hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, any of our social media platforms. And boy, I'm just realizing now we should have done Twisted Teas for the beer for this one after that synonym suggestion.
Have we done Twisted Tea before?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if I've ever actually had Twisted Tea before.
I had it somewhere where I don't know. It was actually pretty refreshing. It was like, I usually don't like those kind of like malt flavored or malt.
There's
liquor
actually some of like
yeah.
the Smirnoff Ices that I kind of like.
Really?
Like there's times where I've been like besides like the traditional original.
The original flavor's so bad.
It's awful, but there's one that's like it's basically just like a screwdriver. It might even be called screwdriver.
Oh
it's
yeah,
just like
we have
orange
those.
flavored one, and then there's like a green apple one, and like I don't know, they weren't bad. Like
the screwdriver one was pretty pleasant. Yeah.
Why did we have those? Did we just get iced on the podcast?
I don't know. I think we were working on the music video that we were shooting, and you said you had it left over from something.
No idea.
All right.
Anyway, we didn't get Twisted Teas. This week we're drinking...
what do we have?
Paddington Bear 2 movie. Boddington's Pub Ale. I was trying to find something British since we were doing Darkest Hour about Great Britain. And I was having trouble finding something in like the non-refrigerated aisles, and then I saw this. I was like, "Oh, that's about as British as it gets." Pub ale, and it's even got like the whatever that ball is in there to keep it from. I don't even know what it really does in a beer. It's like a ball thing they have in Guinness.
I feel like I really liked this in college. I would have it a lot. I haven't had it since then. It's good though. I like it.
Creamy.
It is creamy. It's like a lighter Guinness.
I hadn't had it before.
I had a lot of Guinness the other night, and it was just so heavy.
It's smooth and creamy, if the label is to be believed.
I believe it.
Also 1 pint.
It's got a strange taste. I don't like. It's been so long since I've had
to put my finger on it. All right, this is going to be a weird. Just follow me on this.
Okay.
Take a sip.
It's in my mouth right now. I can taste it.
Think about dry erase markers.
Oh, maybe like the yeah.
Right, like
or the eraser that you use for the dry.
I guess I've never ate any of them. But there's something about the taste like reminds me of the smell of like a dry erase board. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess it's more like the like spray you would spray on a dry erase board to wipe everything off.
Yeah. It also kind of tastes like, have you had that, that
Why
beer?
Did I think of that? I can't get that out of my mind when I drink this now.
That beer, like Honey Brown or whatever?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll have to bring that sometime because they sell that in 30s.
Is that like good really dry erase markers?
Delicious. No, it kind of tastes like it.
Premium
has
Expo dry erase markers. Not the Staples brand.
But name brand shit. Yeah, not bad though.
I'm not a fan, but what do I know? I'm just the guy who bought it. I'm doing the IMDb this week, right?
I I'm IMDb now.
I'm DB now.
Yeah, you are.
During the early days of World War II, the fate of Western Europe hangs on the newly appointed British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, who must decide whether to negotiate with Hitler or fight on against incredible odds.
Whoa, someone wrote a novel for us over here.
Chill out.
That's 3 lines of our Word document, of our Google Doc
Precious
document.
space that we could have put into notes that we didn't actually take for this movie. If you can't tell, this is a 3rd episode, which is more like a 4th episode for us because I'm trying to think of this is coming out first.
Okay.
Next week we'll have The Shape of Water. And then the week after that, we had Ross Wiseman on for Mudbound, which is a great episode.
Yeah, it's a really great episode.
And Ross is from the podcast Kid Flicks, and so we did an episode of Kid Flicks after that. So this is our 4th podcast episode we're recording tonight.
It is.
We're talked out. Mm-hmm. We're tired.
We literally had
drunk.
to just like sit down,
Watch some YouTube for a while.
Yeah, because it was just. I'm just like exhausted from talking so much. But no.
Talk on we shall.
Yes, we shall.
We will talk on the beaches. We will talk on the sands. We will never surrender.
Oh boy.
All right.
So Darkest Hour is isn't there a film called The Darkest Hour?
Yes.
Now I gotta look it up.
2011 science fiction film.
Jesus. You're just supposed to show it to me, IMDb.
Isn't there I think there's a horror movie.
Oh man. The Darkest Hour. Emil Hirsch. Olivia Thirlby. In Moscow, 5 young people lead the charge against an alien race who have attacked Earth via our power supply.
I remember this.
I don't remember this at all.
I never saw it, but I remember.
This looks like a fucking really like low quality.
There's also a band called The Darkest Hour.
How did they get Emil Hirsch on?
Or maybe they're just Darkest Hour.
And where's Emil Hirsch been? I guess he's just been doing Emil Hirsch. I don't know. There's a lot of movies that I missed the Chinese window. But anyway.
Hi, welcome to Mike and Joe Read Wikipedia.
So Darkest Hour, minus the was directed by Joe Wright. And Joe Wright has directed Pride and Prejudice, Atonement, The Soloist, Hannah, Anna Karenina, Pan, and yeah, that's everything that he's directed. He's also in pre-production for a film called Stoner. What's that about? A poor farmer in the early 1900s. That's not what I thought. Yeah.
I thought it was going to be starring Seth Rogen. Was he nominated for Atonement?
I'm sure he was. Hannah's such a weird movie too. Did you ever see
that?
that?
The one with the girl serial killer or girl assassin or something like that?
Yeah, that's Saoirse Ronan.
Oh, it's right. Is that before or after Lovely Bones?
A little baby girl. I think it's before. I don't know. I remember seeing that in the theaters, just thinking, I was like, that was a weird movie.
Wright himself was not nominated for director for Atonement.
Oh, okay then.
A little bit of drama there.
Yeah. That's so weird. We have like that novel like right in our hallway.
I haven't actually seen Atonement. It's on my list just because it was nominated.
Mm-hmm. I don't even remember it really, so I don't think you're missing much. So The Darkest Hour, starring Gary Oldman, Kristen Scott Thomas, Lily James, Stephen Delane, Ronald Pickup, Ben Mendelsohn. And it's up for quite a few awards as well. Mike, would you like to tell us about that?
I would once I navigate back to our document. It's actually not that many awards.
Okay. Well, I was wrong.
We all thought it was going to be up for more. 1 for Critics' Choice. Just Best Actor for Gary Oldman. Mm-hmm. Golden Globe, Best Actor in a Motion Picture Drama, again, Gary Oldman. which it may have won by the time this comes out.
Right.
Because we're recording this on a Saturday. Golden Globes will be Sunday. This will come out the Thursday after that, so you'll know the results, but we don't. And Screen Actors Guild Awards, outstanding performance by a male actor in a leading role. Again, Gary Oldman. So really, it's just been people saying like, yeah, Gary Oldman's pretty good.
Yeah.
And it's a possible nominee for Best Picture, but I think it's really lost some of the steam it held before some of these other awards started getting their nominations out there. So I would actually be kind of surprised if it was nominated for Best Picture at this point.
Yeah.
It was once considered like, sort of like that top tier of like The Post, Dunkirk, and Darkest Hour were kind of like, who's going to win Best Picture? Or maybe Shape of Water you throw in there too. Mm-hmm. And now it's kind of fallen out of favor.
I can't say I'm surprised about that. This is one of the first films, besides Mudbound, I really went into that pretty blind. I don't think I ever saw this trailer.
I saw a trailer for it a long time ago.
I didn't. Still to this day, I haven't seen a trailer for it. I didn't even look it up.
It was one of all those like contenders besides obviously Dunkirk, which released a long time ago. Mm-hmm. It was like one of the first to release a trailer. So I like hopped on that and I was like, all right, I just want to know like
what is this?
What are these movies that I'm looking at?
Yeah. So I don't know. Everything I was seeing was brand new. That's like a really cool experience. Again, because I did it for two of the movies that we reviewed in this batch of movies that we're recording. Yeah, I don't know. That was just a thing. Oh, we were talking about. I was in like sitting in the same exact theater in like my movie theater, which has like 22 theaters in it. I was sitting in the same exact one that I sat in for Star Wars, and I saw Star Wars at like 10:40. It came out at like, what time was that, like 7 p.m. was the first showing of Star Wars on Thursday?
I think there were 6 p.m. ones.
Okay.
They get earlier and earlier every year.
And as you can imagine, a theater that has 22 theaters, they were playing Star Wars all over the place. So I saw Star Wars. I kind of got there 5 minutes before it started, bought my ticket and went in, and it wasn't really that crowded of a theater. It was just, like I saw it opening night, but like fucking
it had been spread out enough,
20 theaters had also already played it like opening night within just this one movie theater. But I saw this at like 6:40 on like a Tuesday or Wednesday, and the fucking house was packed. I was like, why is this more crowded than Star Wars? And I mean, I guess I had just gone to Regal or whatever, but the old white people were clamoring for this. You had a similar experience, didn't you?
I mean, I had a pretty packed theater for Star Wars. Like,
oh no, not
probably
about the
sold
Star
out showing.
Yeah,
but
you
it
went
was
early.
It was still.
Yeah. You didn't go like 10:40.
It was like 8. I think,
okay, yeah.
When I saw the Star Wars, the Star Wars. But Darkest Hour was pretty packed too. I actually had. I can't remember if I told you about this yet, but I had a pretty funny theater experience. Just
really?
In terms of, I went to see it by myself after work yesterday. Get to the theater, it's pretty packed, so I just like pick an open seat somewhere, and I'm next to this like older couple. I mean, it's all old people in there, but they're just like, you can just tell that these people have not been out in a while and are just not like really used to like theater etiquette. So like they were just kind of like breaking all the like rules of like what you don't do in a theater, and like most of their grievances were just like them talking the entire time, like just treating it like it was their living room and just like discussing the movie while we're watching it, explaining the movie to each other while we're watching it. There was one time where like the lady like got up, so I like put my legs down, because I usually sit like in front of the handicap seat so I can put my legs up. Like it's my living room. So I like put my legs down and she walks past and she's like, just so you know, I'm going to be coming back. So I was like, okay, like, yeah, I figured you were going to come back to your seat. I'll put my feet down again when you come back. Like, it's not a big deal. It's not what I said. I was polite.
Right, yeah.
In my response to her. So that was one thing. And then, yeah, so they're like talking the entire movie, and they always happen to be talking whenever there's like quiet parts or like quiet moments. So like and they're not even trying to like whisper, like they're just flat out ignoring that there are other people in the theater and talking the entire time. And then at one point, like, I mean, they're eating popcorn loudly too. So I'm just like, I keep like kind of doing like a, like, like I can fucking hear you guys. Like, shut the fuck up. And then at one point, the husband just straight up burps, like not even like trying to like hide it. It was just a flat out like belch. And I was like, oh my God, like they literally think they're in their living room. Like they have just completely tuned out the fact that there's a packed theater around them. And I thought it couldn't get any worse. And then straight up at one point, the dude literally let out a fart in the movie theater. Like after a burp, after like talking the entire time. And I don't know. It was just, I have never seen people so like out of tune with how you act in a movie theater.
I hate that. And it's older.
I mean, I loved it once he farted because I was just like, all right, now this is a story.
Yeah.
Before I was angry. Now I'm so glad that this happened.
Luckily, I didn't have that. That didn't happen to me this particular time. But any sort of fucking movie that's crowded with old white people, I'm just like, shut up. Or I'll like, usually they'll be sitting behind me, so I'll do like this kind of thing where I'll like look behind me, like I'll like be like, I'll kind of like but I won't like look back at them kind of like, come on guys, like I'll be like I'll kind of just like look back, be like, oh, what's going on back there, like oh, like, is there something going on in the theater that I should also know about? Yeah, no, exactly. You're right. It's just kind of like naive, kind of like, whoa, what's? Oh, you guys are fucking talking during the movie. I better see what's so important back here. And there's literally two like women in front of me during some movie this year, and I didn't really. They were fucking talking to each other the entire time, and. It was one of those things where I was getting so mad I was kind of talking to myself. And then all of a sudden the movie went like really like, you know, it was like high volume and they're kind of like talking over it. And then I started talking to myself and then all of a sudden like the volume just cut out. And I was like, come on, guys. And I was like, both looked at me and I was like, just stop talking. Like I've never said anything before and I accidentally had to say something.
I was getting close. I mean, the most I could muster was just like, like,
oh no, yeah,
I hear you, dude. Like,
you had to give him like passive aggressive. Yeah, it is. It's just kind of. We talked about that before. Like, if you're like two like ladies, like kind of like catching up, like go to a fucking Starbucks.
Yeah,
this is a movie theater. We all like the worst part is like we all
paid like 15. Well, I didn't because Movie Pass, but
everyone
else paid $15, and I'm mad for them.
Yeah, no, we have 2 hours that we spent this $13.45 on or whatever. You know, it's just like.
It's also like if you're gonna talk during the movie, like if you're gonna go that far, don't do it whenever the movie, like they would only do it when the movie would get quiet because it was like so they could hear each other.
Yeah,
you know, it's like, you know, you make your move when like the thunder is striking and it's loud, and so you can cover up what's actually going on here.
It's also like it just ruins the. I literally can't see myself reaching an age where I'm like, I can't enjoy this movie until like the person next to me explains what's going on. Like, film is a fucking like sometimes I'll be like watching TV with my parents, like watching like House of Cards with my parents, and they're like, well, who's that? And I was like, I don't know, but we're about to find out. Like, you know, like it's just like these
I didn't fully understand like the intricacies of like British politics in this movie, but I let it like kind of play its course, and through context, I understood enough to know what was happening in the movie. I didn't have to ask questions every 5 seconds. They were like explaining stuff to each other. There was one point where they were like, they started like sort of cheering towards the end, like in a really weird way, where like every time he would like say something about like, you know, never giving up or never surrendering, they would just kind of be like, that's right. Yeah. It was like a weird, like white version of like Black Church. Like, yes. Yes, that's right.
There was actually like an old white woman like in front of me where he's talking to what's his name, who is like, I'm going to resign, like if we don't reach some sort of like peace agreement with Germany or whatever, like in 24 hours. And then like the theater went like silent because there was like a break between the dialogue, and the old lady's like, "Resign then." Like, it was just
Do it, you fucking coward.
man.
Old people love this movie. Let's talk about it, though.
Yeah.
I don't know where to start.
Let's just, I mean, I don't even. It's funny that there might be 2 reenactments of Dunkirk up for Best Picture this year.
Probably just one.
Yes, yeah. But at a time, it was very possible that there would. It's just.
You have
funny.
to wonder if, like, when they were making this movie, did they find out that Dunkirk was being made? And were they like, maybe we should wait a little bit? Or were they like, no, let like Dunkirk come out first, and then that'll explain, because there's parts of like this that made more sense because I saw Dunkirk this year, because I had no idea about Dunkirk.
Yeah.
That's more of like a British history thing, and they don't really teach us that shit in school. So
we're also like, in addition to Dunkirk, we're kind of like also in this like Churchill like renaissance where like there's literally a movie titled Churchill out this year where Brian Cox plays Churchill, and then I think
Brian Cox.
He's, you'd have to look it up on IMDb. I know his face and his name. I just can't think of what else he's been in. But then John Lithgow also played Churchill on The Crown, and I think he was nominated for that somewhere. But yeah, that's like all just been this year basically. So it's just like crazy to just keep seeing this over and over again. And you know,
you feel like Hollywood is like realizing like, oh, like there were other people involved in World War II.
Yeah,
and we can go explore Great Britain's experience in World War II.
But here's Gary Oldman, and he's definitely playing the most prosthetic heavy version of Churchill that's probably ever existed.
Yeah, but it is kind of like, it is, I don't know if it's necessarily convincing prosthetics as Churchill.
Yeah,
but I feel like it's enough prosthetics that it looks like a real person, even if it's not Churchill. But it's enough to like, it doesn't look like Gary Oldman anymore. So then you can kind of like remove it from Gary Oldman and put Churchill in its place. And I think to that degree, it sort of works, the prosthetics going on.
Yeah.
Like you don't look at it at all and say Gary Oldman. I was like struggling to see Gary Oldman's face.
Yeah, definitely.
And Churchill's face in this.
It's not like fucking, I don't know if this was necessarily bad or this was just the first time that I was like, wow, that's bad prosthetics. But the J. Edgar or whatever, what was Leonardo DiCaprio in?
Yeah, I guess it was J. Edgar.
It was just, it looks so bad. I don't know. That was like the first time I was like, wow, prosthetics can be really bad in a like pretty good movie. But no, the prosthetics were definitely, they were working. I mean, it looked good. It didn't look like a real human kind of thing.
Like, there's times when it kind of looks like Churchill, and I listened to the Director's Cut podcast with Joe Wright talking about this movie, and he was talking about how like they wanted to put prosthetics on, but he was like Gary Oldman like does a lot of acting with like his like upper lip. And he's like, so we couldn't really put any prosthetics on there, so we had to kind of just go everywhere else but like certain parts of Gary Oldman's face. And he's like, if you look at him from like certain angles, it does look like Winston Churchill, and if you look at it from other angles, it just looks like Gary Oldman. And he was like, but we also didn't want to like only restrict ourselves to shooting from those angles, so we just kind of just shoot it all over, and hopefully you kind of get the point.
Right. And I feel like that's where I don't know, because I never really saw like too many glaring details that I'm like, oh man, that's prosthetics kind of. I mean, I obviously knew, because there's definitely like I laugh at like a particular scene in like Looper all the time by Rian Johnson, and they try to make what's his name,
Joseph Gordon-Levitt
look like
Bruce
Willis. And there's like some like close-up scene that's just literally, it's so goofy. Like I was just, it's like when they're in the field or whatever, and I was just like, are you kidding me? Like, who let this be in the movie? But But yeah, no, I never had that problem in here. But that was kind of this weird kind of disconnecting experience for me where I couldn't see Gary Oldman in the role, kind of. It was just strange.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a bizarre experience, this whole movie. I don't know. It's also like this movie's such an acting piece and really nothing else.
Oh yeah.
It's like that's literally all it is. And Gary Oldman has some like very nuanced, sort of subtle performances, and I feel like this is not one of them. He's fantastic in this movie, don't get me wrong. But again, maybe under all of that prosthetic, like you can't really get across like a more subtle performance. Mm-hmm. It's just a lot of yelling and
Winston was also not really a
over-exaggerating
subtle
and-
guy.
Yeah, but I think everybody has some sort of subtlety to them, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
There's definitely quieter moments in this. I think because of the way the screenplay is sort of arranged, there's parts where it gets quieter, and there's definitely something subtle sort of going on. I'm just not sure what it is. Like the scene that comes to mind is when they're down in like one of the war room, I guess it's Miss Layton's office, and she kind of confides in Winston about her brother being retreating to Dunkirk and getting killed there. And he just kind of like is sort of starting to tear up, and he looks at her for a really long time, and she's like, "What?" And he's like, "I'm just looking at you." And it's like you could like take like a creepy interpretation of that. You could take just like interpretation of him just pausing to think for once and formulating. Right. There's like a bunch going on, and I'm not sure what they wanted us to get out of that scene. So I think there are subtle scenes in this, but because the screenplay is maybe not the greatest at parts, it doesn't come across in the performance as great as well. Like I just don't know what they're trying to say there.
I also hate that scene in particular, just because like this scene or this movie does like a lot of kind of, it's just like fucking, I get it. World War II happened. So like you know, like it was just kind of like, it was just like, for me, it was just like, this was like the King's Speech. Like I really did not like the King's Speech that won Best Picture. I was kind of like, damn, really? Like about that. And I don't know. There's just so many like, there's been like a decent amount of bad World War II movie, like Imitation Game we were talking about earlier. I know you like that, but that just like, even they tried to make it interesting, and I was just like, I don't know. Like I feel like they tried to make it interesting and modern. I was just like, I guess this is not my type of film. Just like right out the gate, I just want to say, like, if I have some sort of bias towards this film, it's A, I think this is an acting piece, and I think the story definitely suffers from that. And B, I'm just not fucking interested in historical drama. I mean, it's not
even like, it's like political historical drama. It's like almost kind of like what like Lincoln was.
Yeah.
Where it was like you take this figure, but then the story is not like Lincoln waging the Civil War or Lincoln like getting assassinated. It's Lincoln trying to get the Emancipation Proclamation passed.
But it was also just so like my like eyes would roll out of my head sometime. Like that whole thing with the whole like, that's so like paint by the numbers, like kind of like, and like at some point like his quiet assistant admits that she has like her fiance or brother or whatever is actually in the war that they're kind of making light of. Like you know, it's just kind of like, yeah, I've seen this fucking. In the other thing I fucking hate too is like I like kind of like giggled like in the beginning when he's like, you know, I've never been on a train before or whatever. I was like, that's coming. They're gonna use that as some sort of like weird, fucking dumb, stupid thing that never happened when he got on a train and like talked to the people.
There's a bunch that they.
Yeah, it's just
he didn't even have this secretary until like a year after these events.
Yeah, it's just and like that's, you know, I don't know. It's just all of that stuff is so cliche. Like they read some sort of like manual, like you know, like period, like biopic period pieces manual. Like here's like all the cliches you can kind of put into your like Wikipedia article to like make it like 3-dimensional kind of. It was just kind of like, okay. And it's cool that like Gary Oldman got to like reenact like some of Churchill's like iconic speeches, but I was just kind of like, there wasn't enough connective tissue around that for me to really care about this movie.
Yeah. I was trying to say something about the... Oh, just in terms of like the one scene that we were kind of honing in on with the, I'm just looking at you, and him reflecting on what she said about like her brother dying, trying to get back to Dunkirk. Like, I think I'm further detached from that scene because I don't know... Again, I don't know what it's trying to accomplish, and then I don't know what it does accomplish in the end. Like, even just in terms of the plot, not in terms of like what we're trying to, like,
right? Yeah,
glean from that scene. Like, he already has, like, had not really even entertained the idea of surrender. Mm-hmm. He's already like wanted to, let's get everyone out of Dunkirk so that we can bring them, back home and continue fighting the German army.
Right.
Like, if there's a version of this movie where maybe he was entertaining the idea of surrender, and then like that like solidifies him, and he's like, no, like these kids can't have died for nothing. We can't leave them over there in Dunkirk, and
it wasn't.
Like, we have to just bring them home and keep on fighting. Like,
it was like a turning point moment that wasn't a turning point.
Yeah.
Weird.
So I don't know what they're really going for there, but yeah, before we started recording, I was just reading this article of just like a list of the things that they're just kind of like twisted in this movie from like a World War II British historian, and like that obviously that ride on the tube at the end didn't happen in real life. I mean, I think we all knew that from that.
Yeah, when they have a fucking like impromptu poetry recital like on the train.
There's parts of it I like. I'll get
so
to it when
goofy.
we sort of get to the ending later. But then, like, I think the one scene I didn't really like, and I could kind of like smell the fakeness of it a mile away, is him making the call to Franklin Roosevelt.
Yeah.
And like asking him for help. And there's like someone doing like a weird Franklin Roosevelt impression on the other line.
Yeah, it was weird. Yeah.
And it kind of reminded me of like Richard Nixon in like the Watchmen movies. Even though we don't get to see this character, it was just kind of like something about it was strange. And it's just like that didn't happen in real life. We didn't have that direct line to Britain during that time, and even like the reasoning of it felt strange. Like I have a hard time imagining that if we did have that line and they called us, Franklin Roosevelt would just be kind of like skirting around, the question and trying to avoid it in that way. It felt very strange and forced. There's a few other like small things that were changing this. Like I said, like he didn't have that secretary until a year after these events actually took place. A bunch of other small stuff that doesn't really matter. They have to twist some things obviously to make this movie more interesting than the actual. Like the other thing they were saying is that like they weren't really like shouting matches in like the war room. Like the way the war room was set up, it was just kind of be like people discussing things in different corners of it, and you would kind of like hear people being like, well, maybe we could surrender in like the other corner of the room, and they'd be like, no, we can't do that. It wasn't like some big philosophical debate that took place. I also thought it was really cringy, and maybe I don't know the context of some of like Churchill kind of has like a bunch of like famous like sayings, like almost kind of like Yogi Berra. I mean, not in the like Yogi Berra, they're like yogiisms or whatever, where they're kind of like sayings that don't make sense, but like Churchill just has a ton of like famous quotes,
right?
And I guess I have to be truthful that I don't know the context of all those quotes that are famous, but I have a hard time believing that all of them took place over the course of this month, and they just kept inserting them in here, like probably stuff that he said in like speeches in public that we have on recorded knowledge, but they like insert them into like war room scenes, like the part where he's like, you don't reason with a tiger when your head is in like its jaws, and like that's a great quote, but I just have a hard time believing that he gave that quote in the war room and we remembered it from there. Like that's one of his most famous lines, and we're just gonna pull that from like the war. So it's just cringy to like insert that in like the war room stuff. It's kind of like historical like Easter eggs. Like remember this quote? Remember this quote about Winston Churchill? And it's like we couldn't get to understand the character well enough that you could come up with like something else that he might say similarly in these circumstances, besides just pulling direct famous quotes from Winston Churchill and inserting them here. And again, maybe he said that in the war room, but I'm pretty sure he didn't.
Yeah. I don't know. Even like the beginning, kind of like the beginning was like just kind of off-putting when they were in. I don't know what that one room is where, again, I'm not totally
Parliament, I guess.
Yeah, up to date or just knowledgeable about their politics. But it was just like an off-putting scene. Like, I mean, it definitely demonstrated that things aren't working. We need a new power, but just the way that it was shot, the way that I don't know, I just like wasn't crazy about it.
I think there's certain parts of this movie that are confusing to me because I don't understand British politics.
Yeah.
Like some of those scenes, I'm confused when they say stuff like opposition party and stuff like that. Is that like their word for like, or how they refer to like the minority
I actually don't
party? And again, like there's stuff, and it doesn't really matter to the film, but it also just makes me like spend a lot of the film thinking about like, what do they mean when they say that? They kept saying stuff like new government. Like, did they just change the whole government system? For this like period that Churchill was leader? And then like they keep saying vote of no confidence, and I just keep thinking of is that Phantom Menace or is that Attack of the Clones?
I think that's Attack of the Clones.
No, I think it's Phantom Menace.
Is it?
When they go to the Senate with Palpatine. And they invoke.
Oh, okay.
I invoked the vote of no confidence.
I like the minute you said it,
I didn't realize it was a real thing from I thought it was a Star Wars thing from their Senate.
The minute you said it, I knew where it was from. But yeah, I don't know. I think those scenes could have been cooler. I don't know. Everyone waving their papers like people wave those sticks at like an NBA game during a free throw. Like it was just
rally towels.
Yeah. It was just like boring fucking shots. Like whoever shot this loved fucking like bird's eye view and like again. Fucking like we talk about this in Mudbound in 2 weeks, but they work with like a very minimal budget and they're able to get across like quite a few like World War II scenes that look like really believable in my opinion. And these were just so stupid. Like they would have like these bird's eye kind of renderings of land, and then they'd like do like a weird like transition or just something where like a fighter pilot kind of their plane or whatever would just block out like the entire screen and like pass by like to kind of like it was just like dumb like stupid.
There are some shots and scenes that I do really like in this movie. Like I like when he's giving the radio address and they're like counting down and then it switches to the red light. And we have like the red light in the foreground and him in the background, more in focus. There's a lot of nicely colored scenes like that. But then there are some really dumb shots in this movie. Like I hate the shot of the one commander at Calais, I think it is, the base that they're kind of sacrificing to the Germans to distract them so they can try and get everyone else out of Dunkirk. And they have the guy just like walking through the whole base, which is like a really boring shot. That actor kind of sucks at that part because he's just kind of like mumbling to all the different soldiers.
Yeah.
So it's like, all right, why are we doing this like following shot through the space of the sky? And then it flips up and he looks up to like the heavens and it like goes up and it takes so fucking long to get like high up. And like, it's just so like obviously choreographed where like it doesn't seem natural that he's just like I'm gonna look straight up and just stay looking straight up.
Yeah,
like it doesn't make any sense at all. And then the other shot that I really hate, doesn't really have to do with the composition of the shot, but like when Miss Layton gets taken down to the war room because he's like all right, like I'll explain to you like what's going on down there. and then he shows her like the map and explains to her with Calais and Dunkirk, and he explains that like like they're probably all gonna die, and then she just sits there kind of like caressing the map, and I'm like,
in the map.
What is that? Because like she already knows that her brother's dead by that point, right?
Yeah.
I might be confused about the timeline of that, but I'm pretty sure that like, because when she reveals to Winston that her brother's dead, it happened a week ago. She says, like, we found out last week that he died trying to retreat back to Dunkirk, which is also confusing because it's like, all right, well then she clearly knows something that's going on in that, you know, the French theater of the war. I don't know. It was very strange. That like really pulled me out of it.
Yeah. I didn't even really, I saw some critics like complimenting like that one shot where he's like coming down on like that kind of like elevator to go into like their bunker or whatever, and like there's just pure like black on either side of him, and I was just kind of like, okay, like
I don't remember the shot. That didn't really stand out to me.
Yeah, it's just he's on like an elevator going down into the bunker.
The other shot I hated was all the people, I guess I don't know what they call them. They're not senators, but you know, they're members of parliament.
Right.
Where they had that shot where it'd be like just following different pairs of them around the like second floor of some part of the parliament building, I guess, and hearing all the different like shit talking that they're saying about Winston Churchill.
That was so, And
it was just like they all also look so similar because they're all just old white guys that I thought for a minute it was like they were trying to show the passage of time of a really long shit talking conversation that two old white guys were having. And it was a while before I was like, oh no, these are all different old white guys that are talking shit on Winston Churchill.
But that elevator shot, it's just like they're like, film critics were like, yeah, like he's just like in a sea of like black. It shows like how isolated he really was. Like it's a metaphor or something. And I was like, really? Because like it looks like he's in a fucking black box theater kind of, and nothing's actually happening, and they don't have like a working set for him to like actually come down in an elevator. It was just kind of like this like abstract kind of like looking thing, and I was just like, why do it at all? Like I
don't even remember it.
Yeah.
That's what's weird. It's like there's shots like that, or the ones that we pointed out that are like they tried to do these really grand things, and it kind of sucks. But then there's shots where they just do really simple things, and it really fucking works. Like I really love the shot and the whole scene when King George comes to meet him at the end, like kind of like the day before everything really goes down.
Yeah, I do like that.
They do a really good job of like expressing that it's the middle of the night, even though they're inside. Just with the way that they light that room with like, you know, these kind of like harsh lights that are casting a lot of shadows inside this room. Like you really fully understand like, okay, it's like 4 a.m. and King George is coming to see him. And like, it's just a really well lit scene throughout the entirety of it. And it's pretty simple, but then they do those, you know, these bold choices of like, let's have this really like long follow shot kind of like walking backwards and looking at this guy walking through his base trying to like cheer the spirits of the soldiers. Then he has this majestic look to the heavens that's going to take 5 minutes for us to pull upwards from him, and then the bombs are going to fall. Wasn't there like one shot where there was something? I watched so many movies this week to catch up for the podcast, but I can't remember if it was this or Mudbound, but wasn't there a shot where there was like, they were looking at something happening, we were seeing something happening in a war, and then it sort of mutated into like the dots on like the war board, and then but that ended up turning into like a dead soldier's face with like a red eye. What the fuck was that shit?
That was terrible.
Like that's the bold shit that they do in this. That's like, you didn't need that. You have like a capable cinematographer, technically speaking, who can light and set up these really beautiful shots with just doing like really simple basic stuff to get the point across. A
lot of the cinematography, here's the problem, is the cinematography and almost like the story doesn't fit Gary Oldman's performance in a weird way. Like his performance is like, like he really commits, and it's really simple kind of, and then they do try to like overcomplicate.
They're trying to spice things up to make up for it being a sort of boring political film.
Yeah, that scene's all coming back to me. I remember watching that, being like, "What is this? Like a fucking music video from the early 2000s or something? Like, is this Switchfoot? Like what is that?
We were meant to live for so much more." Switchfoot. Like it's I think it's technically a great movie, meaning in terms of the technical aspects of the movie, it's great. Technically, it's not a great movie, I would say, but in the technical aspects, you know, like I really actually liked the score to this movie, and it was sort of like a similar thing to I was saying in next week's episode with Shape of Water, where I could like hear that score being played at the Oscars,
right.
Like, you know, as they're announcing this. It won't be, because this won't be nominated, I don't think. And I think there's definitely scenes that like look beautiful, and you know, there's clearly some capable, skilled hands working on this movie. Even in the script, I think there's moments of like brilliance in the script before some of the other parts get like bungled. Like I think this movie does a really nice job of bookending itself. You know, because we have in the beginning that one of actually my favorite shots is him looking out the car and seeing all the people on the street, and they're kind of commenting on them. And I forget who says it, if it's Churchill or someone else, but he's like, you know, you'd hardly know that we were at war.
Right.
And then we come back to that at the end after he's announced, you know, to everyone that like, you know, the Germans are basically at our doorstep. And then it's the same composition, but it's like a slow motion shot, and it's raining, and everyone's kind of like running around freaking out because like, you know, we're on like the brink of annihilation at that point, everyone feels like. So that's like a nice bookend. You have the shot of, or the scene of him kind of just throwing away like, oh, like I've never rode the underground before. And then as much as I love and hate the underground scene, like I just kind of wish that actually happened in real life so I could feel good about that scene, because it is a nice kind of, I don't know, it fits with the movie, but it's a really big like leap of like faith is not the word, but just a logic jump to make, or like a assumption to make that there's just no way it happened. It's a fantastical idea, but it is neat in terms of the way it works in with the script. You know, him trying to understand the common man a little bit more, and using that to help make his choice. And then I also really liked how they set up in the beginning, like Neville Chamberlain, the two guys who are watching him are like, oh, watch, if he like waves his handkerchief, you know, that'll decide who we're supposed to support, and whether we support Winston, you know, in his speech or not. And he, you know, puts his handkerchief away in that first scene, but in the end, when he realizes that like, oh, everyone is really roused by this speech, he has to like, you know, start waving his handkerchief, and everyone else kind of follows in suit. So there's some nice like bookending going on here in the script, and there's definitely some nice scenes in the script. But yeah, there's a lot that's also just not great in this movie. It's very strange.
I kind of, I don't know. There, like, it started kind of even promising with, I don't know. There's like there's like when the first scene that we see. Oh
boy, why you do that?
All right.
Keep talking.
Oh, okay. The first scene where we're introduced to Winston Churchill, he's like, you know, we're seeing his meal prepared, which is like really interesting. I like that, those kind of details. It's quite a breakfast he has kind of like laid out for him. Like that's just like super, like if that's like a detail of like what he actually ate, and that's like huge and gigantic, and it's a cigar, and it's a scotch, and they have seltzer water in it, and then like, you know, the sausages and poached eggs or whatever. Like that's like just, that's so much, that's some of the most like character telling details that are in this movie. It reminds me of kind of like, you ever like look online and see like the Hunter S. Thompson, like people have written about like what his like daily routine was, like what he'd like eat and consume. Like it's tons of cocaine, but like it's also in like LSD and like pitchers of beer or whatever, but it's also kind of just like the bizarre food that he's like eating over the course of the day too. It's just like very like telling of like who is Hunter S. Thompson. And then also his first kind of run-in with his typist or assistant or whatever. Like I kind of liked like the drama between them, and then all of a sudden, like immediately, like it's just kind of like
just went full-fledged into the war and politics. And
it's solved. And
it started out as a pretty personal film,
right?
And it seemed like it was going to be really a character study of who was Winston Churchill,
right?
And we do have a bunch of great scenes, like because we have that, and then Clementine, his wife, approaches Miss Layton as she's trying to leave, and she was like, was he being rude to you? And she goes up and like yells at him herself, and like that's very telling of their relationship. But then we don't really get, we have like one or two scenes of their relationship. After that, we don't really get a whole lot of him and Miss Layton getting to understand each other after that, because he just gets thrust into the prime ministry. And
there's like a family scene where they kind of have like a small celebration
with kids that we never see again.
Yeah, and like they're kind of like I have always kind of like put family on the back burner in favor of politics. Like, don't let us down. Like, there's really like there's no real like family pressure like at all.
There's
that
no
he
payoff
feels
for that scene.
Yeah, and there's just so many weird, like this film starts out looking like a completely different film. I don't know. It's just it's strange. Yeah. I don't know.
I'm just like looking through my notes to see if there's anything I didn't get to yet. Yeah, I mean, we talked about the made up phone call to Roosevelt.
It's almost like they tried to make that sound like that was like a recorded phone call that was like that they like preserved and like cut out like the original. Like it just sounded so like they tried to like almost like make some sort of like false like I feel like they tried to convince people who weren't going to go home and fact check it. Like, oh wow, do they think they used like the real like call from like Roosevelt?
I heard people like gasp in my theater when Roosevelt like says like no. And I just wanted to be like, yeah, that didn't happen. Like, yeah, we didn't intervene, but I don't think they called us.
Yeah.
And we were like, nah, sorry. Busy. Red, 12:37 a.m. Winston's like, you up? We need your help. Yeah. I like love and hate the ending of this movie too, or the ending sequence rather. I hate the ending. I have love for the ending sequence of this movie because I think it does like kind of like this really good job of building up momentum, where you have that scene with Ben Mendelsohn as King George that I was talking about at 4 a.m, where Winston's obviously at his like kind of lowest, and he comes and gives him this sort of like vote of confidence of like, you have my support, you've kind of earned my trust through the fact that you're able to scare Hitler, and anyone who can scare Hitler can probably pull us out of this. And then we go from that to him like riding the underground and getting sort of there, getting the view of the people. And as much as that's like it's kind of a cheesy scene, but again, in this film I kind of like it. I just don't like the fact that they're bending history that much, but whatever. If you overlook that, that's kind of a nice scene. I like the concept of it, at least, of going to the people, seeing what the people want instead of just these kind of aristocratic war room people who haven't really wanted for anything their entire life. They're all lords or dukes or earls of something or somewhere. And he gets kind of their opinion, and then he goes and gives the speech to his colleagues and does the whole choke on your blood scene, and is able to kind of like turn them around, get their support, and then go to Parliament and deliver the more famous speech. And again, we have sort of the payoff of like the handkerchief part from before, and there's a lot of stuff that's just coming back. But then it just kind of ends, and those all seem like things that are building up to what could be like, I don't know. I mean, I guess this is based on history, that's as far as it can really go. It's not like Winston Churchill's going to go out and actually fight Hitler himself.
Right, yeah.
So I don't know what more they could do after that, but it just seems like there's all this buildup, and then it just ends, and he just walks out the door. And it almost seemed like it was like setting up for like a sequel. Like it has that like momentum of like, well, it felt like the ending of like a superhero movie where like, we already had the big climactic fight scene, and then they do the build up for just to get to the credits and to get to the end of the movie to get you excited to, I can't wait until they do the next movie, type excitement.
Darker
Anyway, I don't know what I'm going to give this, but do you want to get into ratings?
Yeah, sure.
Let me read Rotten Tomatoes. On review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds an approval rating of 84% based on 173 reviews, with an average rating of 7.4 out of 10. The site's critical consensus reads, Darkest Hours held together by Gary Oldman's electrifying performance, which brings Winston Churchill to life even when the movie's narrative falters.
That's a lot more negative than any sort of... This got like a bunch of really great like critical responses, and I was just kind of like, really, guys? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'll go first, but I kind of don't know what I'm going to give this either. I kind of do, I kind of don't. I mean, I've said everything that I've wanted to say, but again, it is kind of like, it's unfortunate, but I mean, this film is like further diminished by the release of Dunkirk, I think, just because we get to see a more populist kind of view, even though Winston Churchill or Darkest Hour tries to make some sort of a populist plea at the end with the train scene and everything. I don't know. It was an acting piece, I think. It was an acting piece, and I don't know if it was anything more than that. I think everybody in it was like really great, Gary Oldman included. I came away from this not being super confident that like he should win Best Actor. I was just kind of like, yeah, that's good and he should be nominated, but I don't know if that's the best performance I've seen. Like, I couldn't tell you what was the best performance or whatever, just because I haven't seen all these movies yet, and I haven't sat down and really been like, oh, this is
Robert Pattinson, good time.
better. Yes. Yeah. Put some more good time in the Oscar nominees.
The ones that aren't out yet, put them in there.
Yeah. We could still be surprised, guys. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, no, I enjoyed everyone's performance. Who was the man in power before that Winston Churchill?
Neville Chamberlain.
I kept thinking that was the actor that played Mr. Feeney in Boy Meets World. He looked so similar to that. I'd be like, is that fucking Mr. Feeney? It's definitely not. I mean, near the end, I was kind of like, okay, no, that's not him. But like, there was scenes where I was like, in a certain light.
The one guy is Stannis Baratheon. Is it Baratheon? You're not caught up on Game of Thrones.
I'm not. Yeah,
he's a guy from Game of Thrones. Although I think he's one of the guy I'm talking about was in the first season.
Yeah, it's just been so long though. I don't remember.
The Halifax guy was in.
Yeah,
he was definitely in Game of Thrones.
Okay, yeah, I get it. Yeah,
Stannis,
the King George, that guy,
Ben Mendelsohn.
Yeah, he was pretty good.
I thought he was great.
Yeah, I especially
he had like a better performance of King George than Colin Firth did.
Yeah, no, right? And I especially, one of my favorite scenes of the movie is when I thought this was the scene you were going to talk about instead of him coming to Churchill. It's what leads up to that is he's kind of standing on like the balcony kind of like the castle, and he's talking to, I guess, like an advisor of some sort. Mm-hmm. And I don't even remember exactly what he says, where maybe he says he has like a dream, or he's like, I can't imagine this. He's like, I can't imagine this place with me not here, or like
it not being here,
or it not being here, yeah. And like it really kind of, it's just, when it gets down to the wire and you're like, should I flee to Canada or should I just stand, like, what would this place be without me, or what would I be without this place, kind of. And I thought that was a pretty powerful moment. But yeah, I mean, I've expressed a lot of my doubts, a lot of my disappointments. Honestly, I didn't think I wasn't coming into this movie expecting to be blown away or anything. I set my expectations pretty low, just because, again, I have World War II fatigue. This looks just super Oscar baity. I kind of don't care about this film if it's up for Best Picture. Really, I don't think the story works. Again, it just seems just like an acting piece. I think I'm gonna give it 2 fingers, which is low. But I kind of want to judge it on the fact that it's been getting so much hype, and the fact that it's competing very seriously, with a lot of, we're in Oscar season, so go big or go home. And I think this kind of just has all the trimmings of like past Oscar sort of films, but it doesn't have what really matters. Again, Gary Oldman, one of the best performances this year, but I just, for an empty movie, I don't know. And that's all.
Yeah, like I think if you were going to give like an MVP award in film, you would give it to Gary Oldman. Because, I mean, like in sports, a lot of times they give it to like the guy who's able to carry his team, who's not really performing around him. And sometimes it'll go to the guy that can get them to the playoffs or at least improve their record enough, because he's, without him, the team would be nothing. And I think that's what Gary Oldman is to this movie. Like without Gary Oldman, my God, is this a kind of a disappointing movie? And he's good. And you can't discount the movie for that, because he is a part of the movie. And, he's kind of the whole focus of the movie. Kind of like I've been saying throughout the entire review, there's some things that I really like in this movie. I think there's some kernels of like really good ideas. There's some really good performances. There's some really good scenes. There's some really good specific shots. But then for all of those, there's like a equally bad counterpart on the other side of it, where there's some really bad scenes. There's some really bad shots. Maybe not performances, because I think the performances are pretty good throughout, but there's just some bad ideas in this movie. Like while you were like giving your review, I was just reminded of like, I was trying to think of like, why was I so off put by that call to Roosevelt? And it's the way that he turns Churchill down, because he's almost like they made it sound like he was like with his advisors like snickering about it, because he's like, yeah, maybe you could like get a bunch of horses in Canada and like drag it across the border yourself. Would that work? He's fucking falling for it. Like it was so corny and unbelievable and like fantastic, like in the sense of like not making sense in the real world. Fucking loser. Fucking British loser. I'm Roosevelt. I killed a bear. It was Teddy Roosevelt, not Franklin Roosevelt. But yeah, I think I'm going to land on 2.5 fingers, because I'm really just kind of split on like, I liked parts of this movie and I really hated parts of this movie. And my opinion could kind of go either way based on which scene I'm watching in this movie. There's parts of this where I'm like, okay, like this is what people are seeing, but then there's parts that I just can't ignore, that I'm like, this is bad, or this is bold and risky and it didn't pay off, or it's just a part that I'm not getting, that, I'm glad that some people enjoyed those parts of this movie, but not me. So I'll give it 2.5 fingers. So that's going to come to 2.25 fingers, rounding down to 2 fingers. So subpar rating.
It was kind of fucking...
for a movie that was kind of leading the pack in Oscar predictions for a while. And but I mean, it seems like, critic circles and stuff like that are agreeing with us as well. Maybe not as low as we're willing to go, but it's been largely ignored in, like the best picture or best motion picture, whatever these different awards shows call that category. And it's really just been recognizing Gary Oldman for his performance in this. And I do think he'll get nominated for the Oscar for sure.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty confident this won't be nominated for Best Picture at this point.
It was kind of a fucking boring movie.
I was entertained at parts, and I was bored at other parts. It's so down the middle for me.
No, it is. I mean, there's
parts that really like riveted me and like moved me, and there's other parts where I was just like, what are we getting at here?
Yeah.
Better luck next time, Joe Wright. But it's been a real long night. So if you agree or disagree, please leave your comments on SoundCloud, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, wherever you're listening and or watching this episode, because we're back on video again.
Back,
I'm pointing
baby.
to the camera that's turned off, but you probably watched at least 55 minutes of this episode on YouTube. So we are back there. Speaking of that, you should subscribe to us on YouTube. And I don't think we've talked about this since the last... We haven't been doing a good job with the links at the ends of our videos because we've been so tired. But we are back at 10,000 plays on YouTube. So thanks so much for helping us get back to the big boy status. Now we're just waiting for YouTube to approve monetization on our videos again. So you don't have to set our playlists on loop anymore unless you want to. We won't tell you not to.
Go for it, yeah.
But just thanks for helping us get back to that. I know some people were definitely putting our shit on playlist loops or watching our Star Wars teaser trailer that Joe made for Solo, which is our most watched thing.
It's got maybe like a third,
5,000.
Yeah, like a third of all like our total combined views.
It's accurate. And pretty much everything else you can find at howmanyfingerspodcast.com. iTunes link, rate us, review us, subscribe to us, mailing list, sign up for that. Hopefully we're going to do a contest in the future again if anyone ever subscribes to the mailing list again on our live streams on Facebook. We got merch, t-shirts, koozies, stickers, and a package deal with all three for $11.99. That's at howmanyfingerspodcast.bigcartel.com, or you can find a link on our website and an Amazon link and an iTunes link. Again, as we always say, click on either one. Anything that you purchase within each respective browser window within the next 24 hours will get a nice cut of. Really easy way to support us.
Mike and I just held up our koozies for a not working camera.
For a camera that's not working. It's that kind of night. But that's about it. We're done. Signing out for How Many Fingers the Podcast. I'm Mike.
I'm Joe, and just picture that you're watching us on video, and I'm holding up that weird fucking backwards peace sign that
up the bum.
Up the bum.
Up the bum.